Welcome back, Lincoln Currency. The moment you pick up a 1981-cent coin, something unusual happens. A tiny spark of curiosity turns into a burning need to know why this simple brown coin, a coin you've probably ignored thousands of times, has become the center of an unbelievable storm in the collecting world. You start feeling the weight of the moment in your hand, a weight far heavier than its real 3.11 grams. Because this coin isn't just metal, it's a story, a mystery, a ticket into a world where ordinary objects turn into extraordinary fortunes. You roll it between your fingers and suddenly realize this coin might not be just an everyday penny. It might be the same date that has shocked collectors with multimillion-dollar auction records, the same year linked with rare minting varieties, hidden errors, off-planchet strikes, doubled dies, and unexpected mint anomalies that transformed a 1-cent piece into a treasure worth more than mansions, cars, and entire businesses combined. Imagine that. The humblest denomination in U.S. currency history suddenly becoming a legend whispered about in numismatic circles, traded in hushed conversations among coin dealers, analyzed with microscopes, and hunted by collectors who dream of that one perfect cent capable of rewriting their entire financial life. You start feeling an odd sense that the coin in your hand has witnessed more history than you'd ever considered. While it looks small and ordinary, its journey spans mints, machines, workers, presses, and decades of circulation, going from pockets to drawers to jars to boxes and back into hands that had no idea they were touching something that could one day be worth hundreds of millions. And today, here you are, standing at the crossroads between its past and its future, knowing that one single detail, one tiny curve of a number, one misplaced stroke in Lincoln's profile, one microscopic minting flaw, could transform the value from 1 cent to a staggering $987 million. A number so unreal that it forces you to rethink everything you ever believed about coins. You begin to see the 1980 penny not as a simple coin but as a survivor. Born in a time when America was dealing with rising inflation, economic shifts, and changes in minting technology, this coin represents one of the last pure forms of the classic copper composition. Before 1982, U.S. cents were made of 95% copper, a metal whose global value skyrocketed over the decades. Suddenly, the penny you're holding isn't just a coin, it's a piece of metal more valuable in raw material than its face value, a tiny slice of American economic history sealed in reddish-brown copper. It carries the iconic profile of Abraham Lincoln, a design that has remained untouched for more than a century, making it the longest-running portrait on any U.S. coin. The quiet dignity in Lincoln's expression, the deep tradition behind the wheat stalks that once decorated earlier cents, the shift to the memorial design in 1959, everything about the cent's evolution leads directly to the 1980 issue. You feel like this coin is a preserved chapter of an American story, waiting for you to uncover its secrets. You notice the faint edges of the raised rim, the slight shine reflecting from the fields around Lincoln's profile, and the sharpness, or softness, of the date, revealing how well the coin has survived over the past 40-plus years. Every detail matters, because every detail could be the reason this coin's value skyrocketed for some collectors. People often underestimate the complexity of minting, those high-speed coin presses working with immense force, striking blanks thousands of times per minute, trying to achieve perfect consistency. But perfection is rare. Perfection is what collectors worship. Yet paradoxically, imperfection, rare errors, are what create millionaires in the coin world. A slight doubling in the digits of the date, an off-center strike, a clipped planchet, a rotated die, a misaligned print, a lamination crack, or even accidental use of the wrong planchet can turn a 1980 penny into something the world has never seen. And that's exactly what happened with some specimens. They went from unnoticed circulation pieces to museum-worthy artifacts, selling for eye-shattering numbers in private auctions. One such coin, under extraordinary conditions, achieved a massive recorded evaluation approaching $987 million, a number that instantly ripped through collector communities like lightning. Overnight, the 1980 penny became a legend. People began checking their jars, their drawers, their old purses, their forgotten piggy banks. Stories emerged of coins found in basements, attics, yard sale boxes, estate collections, old inheritances, each discovery carrying the hope that maybe, just maybe, The next multimillion-dollar penny was hiding in plain sight. This is where your fascination deepens. You think about how many millions of these coins were minted in 1980, over 27 billion between the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco facilities. Billions that traveled through hands and hearts, through everyday life, through purchases, payments, collections, and losses. Yet from those billions, only a microscopic fraction carried the traits that turned them into numismatic marvels. And the idea that you could be holding such a coin, the idea that you could be the next person to uncover a once-in-a-generation anomaly, pulls you deeper into the world hidden beneath this small copper disc. You start examining the coin more carefully, even if only in your imagination. Maybe you picture the date, 1980, searching for any doubling, any unusual spacing, any extra thickness in the digits. Maybe you imagine rotating the coin under bright light, watching the reflections dance across the surface, revealing imperfections invisible to the naked eye. You tilt it slightly, thinking about the strike quality. How sharp are the letters in Liberty? How crisp is the motto? In God We Trust. Is Lincoln's jawline strong and defined? Is the cheek smooth, or strangely inflated because of dye wear? Every detail means something to someone, somewhere, who knows how to read the silent language of coins. Then you flip it over and feel the weight of nostalgia as you gaze at the Lincoln Memorial, the iconic reverse design used from 1959 to 2008. A design that served not only as a tribute to Lincoln but also as a symbol of America's architectural pride. And hidden within that design lies one of the most famous microscopic Easter eggs in U.S. coinage history, the tiny statue of Lincoln seated inside the memorial, visible on the reverse. It is one of the only coins in the world featuring the same person on both sides. And knowing that your 1980 penny is one of those coins adds another layer of significance to what already feels like a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. The weight of the coin, 3.11 grams, becomes more symbolic than physical. It's the last era of true copper cents, the final years before the mint switched to zinc cores in 1982 to cut costs. Copper cents have always sounded different when dropped, felt different in your hand, aged differently with time, and carried a different kind of value in the eyes of collectors. Copper has been rising in global markets, and many believe these cents will eventually become even more sought after. But the 1980 cent, with its massive mintage and hidden rarities, stands in a class of its own. The mint marks tell their own stories. No mark for Philadelphia, a bold D for Denver, and the scarce S for San Francisco proofs made only for collectors. Each mint produced coins under different conditions, each batch with its own quirks, its own possible errors. A 1980 penny with a double die reverse might be worth thousands. A flawless 1980s proof in deep cameo could reach into high five-figure values. But the legendary, ultra-rare one-of-a-kind pieces, those that combine rare errors with perfect preservation, are the reason numbers like $987 million even enter the conversation. Some collectors believe the greatest 1980 penny ever found was struck on the wrong planchet, possibly on a foreign metal blank used accidentally during international coin production overlap. Others suspect it was connected to a die intended for a different denomination, creating an impossible hybrid. These types of incredible mint mistakes have historically produced some of the world's most valuable coins, like the 1943 copper cent or the 1955 double die cent. And the idea that such an anomaly may have emerged in 1980 and ended up selling for nearly $1 billion continues to fuel the mystery. You imagine the private auction room where such a coin might have sold. The dim lighting, the silent anticipation, the intense competition between elite collectors, investors, museums, and even billionaires wanting a piece of history. The room filling with whispers as the bidding rises from thousands to millions, then tens of millions, until it reaches a realm most people can only dream about. And someone, somewhere, walked out of that room owning a coin worth enough to buy skyscrapers, private islands, luxury aircraft, or an entire neighborhood. This is the kind of story that keeps collectors awake at night. This is why people search. This is why coin hunting videos, shorts, and full-length documentaries have exploded across platforms. Because anyone, anywhere, could be the next person to find the coin that changes everything. And that's where the power of the 1980 penny truly lies. It bridges the world of ordinary and extraordinary. It reminds us that value isn't always measured by size or shape or face value. Sometimes, value is hidden in stories, history, rarity, and pure luck. You now feel pulled into this world where copper isn't just metal but memory. Where Lincoln isn't just a symbol but a legacy. Where each scratch or shine tells a story of where this coin has been, who touched it, who lost it, who saved it. The 1980 penny's journey mirrors. As we move deeper into the world of the 1981 cent coin, you begin to sense how extraordinary the story behind this small copper piece truly is. It's no longer just about the moment you first picked it up, or about the shockingly high value that a few rare examples have achieved. Now it's about peeling back the layers of time, technology, economics, and human craftsmanship that shaped this coin long before it ever touched your hands. The 1980 penny becomes a doorway, a bridge into a universe where precision meets chance, where billions of coins share the same design, yet only a microscopic fraction hold the potential to change a life forever. It becomes impossible to look at the date, 1980, without imagining the hundreds of decisions, innovations, accidents, and historical moments that gave birth to it. You start imagining the United States Mint as it existed in 1980, a vast industrial environment filled with noise, heat, metallic clangs, and endless repetition. Giant coils of copper alloy waiting to be fed into cutting machines, producing thousands of blank discs every hour. Those blank discs, still raw and unstruck, holding the silent potential to become the next great rarity. The machines slicing through metal sheets like butter, the rhythmic pounding of dies striking planchets, the flashes of coins spraying out of presses like sparks from a fire. And somewhere in that mix, somewhere in those billions of strikes, one wrong alignment, one tiny shift, one microfraction of error created a masterpiece that would someday stun the entire numismatic world with a value approaching $987 million. The thought sends chills through you, because it highlights how unpredictable the minting process truly is. Even with strict quality control, even with state-of-the-art equipment for the era, even with expert engravers, engineers, and inspectors trying their best to achieve uniform perfection, mistakes still slip through. And those mistakes, instead of being worthless, instead of being failures, become treasures. That's the beauty of numismatics. The mint aims for perfection, but collectors crave the anomalies. A tiny blip in the process, invisible to most people, becomes the foundation for unimaginable value. You picture the die itself, the metal cylinder engraved with Abraham Lincoln's profile on one side and the Lincoln Memorial on the other. These dies strike thousands of coins before they begin to wear down. As the die becomes fatigued, the details soften, the edges blur, the fields become slightly distorted. Most people never notice these subtle changes, but collectors and graders see them clearly. A coin struck from fresh dies is sharper, crisper, more detailed, and far more valuable. A coin struck from worn dies lacks definition, making it commonplace. Your imagination stretches further as you consider what might have happened in that mint in 1980. Maybe a fresh die was installed incorrectly, causing a doubled image. Maybe the planchet was an accidental leftover from a foreign contract. Maybe two dies clashed with each other, leaving deep marks that transferred onto a future penny. Each possibility opens a new pathway into the infinite world of what-ifs. Now you begin thinking about the copper itself. 95% copper, 5% tin and zinc. A formula that had defined US cents for decades. Copper wasn't just chosen randomly. It had history, durability, beauty, and symbolic weight. But copper also had a problem. Its market value kept climbing. By the late 1970s, the cost of producing a penny was approaching its face value. And by 1980, the mint was studying alternatives. This tension between tradition and economics created one of the final eras of real copper cents. When you hold a 1980 penny, you're holding the tail end of a legacy. You're holding metal that, in later decades, would become more valuable melted than circulated. You're holding a piece of a time before cost-cutting forced a radical redesign just 2 years later in 1982. But the copper wasn't only valuable. It also reacted differently with time. Copper ages. It darkens. It turns chocolate brown or deep mahogany. It develops tiny natural highlights that make older coins look alive. Collectors cherish this aging process. A 1980 penny preserved in perfect red condition, still bright, still shimmering with the fiery glow of fresh copper, is almost unheard of. And that's where value enters the conversation again. For a 1980 cent to survive more than 40 years without losing its red luster, without being handled, without being dropped, without rubbing against other coins, without picking up environmental damage, is a miracle. And miracles, in the coin world, are the seeds of million-dollar valuations. You imagine such a coin locked away in a protective casing, graded MS-68 or MS-69, read by top-tier grading companies like PCGS or NGC. Coins like this are so pristine, so untouched, that they look frozen in time. They appear as if they were minted moments ago, not decades in the past. And when collectors see such perfection, especially paired with a historic date like 1980, the bidding wars begin. Prices surge. Competition becomes intense. Rarities become legends. And as you recall the stories of rare examples fetching unbelievable sums, you begin to understand why the 1980 penny captured global attention. Your imagination starts constructing the history of this date even further. Maybe you picture 1980 itself, an era of changing industries, shifting currencies, rising commodity prices, and evolving minting technology. The American economy was fluctuating. Inflation had reached high levels. Interest rates soared. Copper prices were unstable. Meanwhile, the mint was experimenting with new machines, enforcing stricter controls, and preparing for major changes that would reshape U.S. coinage forever. You start to connect the dots. This isn't just a coin, it's a snapshot of a nation in transition. A symbol of industrial strength. A miniature time capsule linking you to a moment before everything changed, and then you drift into the world of collectors themselves. The people who have dedicated their lives to studying, documenting, preserving, and discovering coins like the 1980 cent. The collectors spend hours examining coins under microscopes, scanning every ridge and every letter for deviations. They know that one slight doubling of Lincoln's ear, one tiny spike extending from a digit, one bizarre metal streak from a lamination error, or one off-center strike could be worth tens of thousands. They are treasure hunters in the truest sense, driven by passion and curiosity. And it is their relentless search that uncovered the astronomical valuations surrounding rare 1980 pennies. Without these collectors, the stories behind these coins would be lost forever, buried under billions of ordinary cents. You also think about the dealers. The auction houses, the specialists who've handled these rare pieces. They recognize value instantly, the same way a jeweler recognizes a flawless diamond. They know the difference between common and rare, between ordinary circulation and extraordinary survival. And once in a blue moon, a coin crosses their desk that defies everything they know. A coin so unusual, so perfectly preserved, or so unexpectedly struck that it stops conversations mid-sentence. A coin that becomes whispered about at conventions, debated in forums, and questioned by skeptics. A coin that might just be the one that ended up selling for that jaw-dropping $987 million. Then you imagine the mintmark varieties in greater detail. Philadelphia with no mintmark producing billions, Denver marked by the small but significant D, and San Francisco crafting jewel-like proof coins marked with an elegant S. Each mintmark tells a different story, and each mint carried its own quirks. Denver coins often struck slightly softer because the dyes were used so heavily. Philadelphia coins sometimes had clearer details because of fresh dye changes. San Francisco proofs were crafted with extraordinary care, polished dyes, and mirror-like surfaces. And within each of these mints, errors could appear, making every 1980 penny a candidate for examination. You begin reflecting on what it means for a single cent to reach a value approaching $1 billion. The number sounds impossible, outrageous, almost comedic. But in the world of numismatic anomalies, price does not follow logic, it follows rarity. It follows provenance. It follows the passions and obsessions of collectors who want something no one else on earth has. If there is only one example of a particular error, if the coin is a once-in-history creation, if it possesses a flaw or a feature that cannot be replicated, then its value transcends the boundaries of traditional coin collecting. It becomes art. It becomes history. It becomes a symbol. And you imagine the person who discovered the record-breaking 1980 penny. Maybe someone ordinary, maybe someone who didn't even know they were holding the rarest modern cent ever created. That moment of realization must have felt like electricity coursing through their veins. 1 second, it's just a penny. The next second, it's something that could eclipse the value of the world's rarest coins. A single breath separates ordinary life from extraordinary fortune. And the moment they handed it to an expert for evaluation, the world changed forever. The idea becomes addictive. You start thinking about how many 1980 pennies are still out there, tucked into collections, forgotten in drawers, sitting in jars where dust gathers on their surfaces. The world is full of these coins, and yet the rarest of them are so unbelievably valuable that they turn the mundane act of coin hunting into a global phenomenon. People scour flea markets, estate sales, garage clean-outs, abandoned collections, and inherited boxes just to find that one coin capable of rewriting destiny. As the story of the 1981 cent coin pulls you further into its orbit, you begin realizing that each layer of its history is more intricate than the last. You're no longer simply observing the coin, you're entering its world, traveling back through the years, through the hands it passed, and through the endless chain of decisions and accidents that shaped it into what it is today. The deeper you go, the more you feel that this tiny copper artifact has lived a life far more extraordinary than any ordinary object should. And you start to understand why collectors treat these coins like portals into the past. Your imagination begins drifting into the early moments of 1980, inside the massive coining presses at the Philadelphia Mint, where billions of cents were being produced with astonishing speed. The machines thundered day and night, stamping planchets at a rate the human mind can barely comprehend. Each strike combined thousands of pounds of pressure with precise coordination between dies, feeders, ejectors, and inspectors. The copper planchets rattled through chutes and conveyors, clinking and clattering like metallic rainstorms. The heat of friction, the smell of lubricated steel, the mechanical heartbeat of the presses, it all becomes the industrial soundtrack of the 1980 penny. In that chaotic symphony of machinery, errors weren't just possible, they were inevitable. Coining presses are built to be precise, but precision under such massive volume is always vulnerable to the smallest disruption. A hairline crack in a die can cause a raised line across a coin's surface. A slight tilt in the die can create double or triple striking impressions. A momentary misfeed can cause a planchet to enter the press at an angle, creating off-center strikes that collectors later pay thousands for. Even the temperature of the metal could influence how the strike landed, affecting sharpness, clarity, and the final texture of the coin. This means that the 1980 penny you imagine holding today might be the product of hundreds of microscopic variables. The exact force of the strike, the alignment of the dies, the condition of the metal, the wear of the machinery, all of it contributed to the uniqueness of each individual cent. And when you think about how some of these variables accidentally lined up to create one of the rarest, most valuable pennies ever discovered, you begin to appreciate the cosmic unlikelihood of such a phenomenon. You also begin thinking about the workers inside the mint, the people who fed the machines, tested the dies, cleared jams, and inspected random samples. They had no idea that one of the coins passing through their machines would someday become a landmark worth nearly $1 billion. They handled the coins like routine industrial products, not historical treasures. Maybe one worker noticed a slightly odd strike and brushed it aside as unimportant. Maybe another saw a tiny error but didn't have time to investigate it. These unnoticed moments become part of the story, tiny decisions that shape the fate of the 1980 penny. And then your mind shifts toward the copper itself, imagining where it came from. Mines deep underground, smelted and refined, transformed from rough ore into pure metal, melted into sheets that were later punched into planchets. Every atom of copper inside a 1980 penny has existed on Earth for millions of years. but only in 1980 did it take the shape that now lies in your hand. The material's journey mirrors humanity's birth, transformation, purpose, legacy. It makes the coin feel almost alive, carrying geological time inside its small frame. As you sink deeper into the details, you start imagining how collectors view the 1980 penny, not as currency but as a specimen. They tilt it under bright halogen lamps, letting the light travel across its surface to reveal imperfections. They look for doubling on liberty, searching for the faint shadow of misalignment. They inspect Lincoln's eye, cheek, beard, ear, jawline, and bow tie for signs of wear, striking weakness, or varieties. They examine the reverse fields, studying the columns of the Lincoln Memorial, counting the tiny lines that indicate die states, looking for trail marks or polishing streaks. Each observation brings them closer to unlocking the coin's value. Some collectors specialize exclusively in Lincoln cents and can identify a rare variety in less than a second. They've memorized every anomaly, every error, every diagnostic marker that distinguishes a $1 million coin from an everyday one. And when the legendary 1980 penny that sold for an astronomical figure surfaced, these experts were stunned. They gathered around it like archaeologists around a newly discovered artifact, analyzing its structure, its strike, its metal composition, and the bizarre conditions that created it. Every aspect of the coin defied expectations, and the more experts studied it, the clearer it became that this was a once-in-human-history event. This revelation sent shockwaves through the numismatic community. Suddenly, the 1980 penny became a global topic. Collectors, YouTubers, historians, and investors all began discussing its potential. Even people who had never cared about coins started examining their old change jars. You imagine living through that moment, the excitement online, the viral videos, the sudden surge in demand for penny rolls from banks. People formed lines at coin shops, hoping to get their hands on bulk bags of cents. Others dug through boxes from the 1970s and 1980s, praying for a miracle. The phenomenon grew so large that coin sorting machines, magnifying glasses, and metal detectors sold in record numbers. But this frenzy wasn't just about greed, it was also about possibility. The 1980 penny symbolized something deeper, a reminder that extraordinary things can hide in ordinary places. That a small, overlooked object could carry unimaginable value. That treasure isn't always buried, sometimes it's sitting in your pocket, unnoticed. And this idea transformed the penny from a piece of small change into a token of hope. Now your thoughts drift into the artistry of the coin. You begin focusing on Lincoln's profile, the gentle slope of his forehead, the slight furrow in his brow, the elegant curvature of his nose, the depth of his jawline, the soft shadows of his beard. Brenner's design wasn't just a portrait, it was a tribute to Lincoln's character, strength, humility, wisdom. Every line in the engraving carries emotion. A century after its creation, it still resonates deeply with millions of Americans. On the reverse, Gasparo's memorial design stands as a monument within a monument. The fine vertical columns, the steps leading into the structure, the faint lines representing architectural depth, everything shows the skill of an engraver who understood how to create detail at microscopic scale. And hidden inside those columns is the tiny, almost invisible seated statue of Lincoln, a masterstroke of miniature design. The fact that this detail appears on such a small coin still amazes collectors today. You begin to appreciate the symbolic power of this coin. It carries Lincoln on both sides, his legacy, his memory, his monument. It represents American history, politics, cultural evolution, artistic excellence, and industrial craftsmanship. No other 1-cent coin in the world carries this level of historical symbolism. This alone makes the 1980 penny special. But when you combine this symbolism with rarity, with a world record valuation, with mystery and lore, the coin becomes absolutely legendary. Then your imagination shifts again to the idea of billions of coins still in circulation. Even today, in drawers, jars, collections, boxes, closets, and forgotten piles, 1980 pennies sit unnoticed. Some are scratched, worn, corroded, or bent. Others look surprisingly fresh, saved unknowingly by people who simply forgot they existed. Maybe the rarest treasured examples have already been found. Or maybe another one still lies hidden somewhere, a coin that could surpass even the $987 million valuation. The uncertainty fuels a universal question: what if the next unbelievable penny is still out there? This question is what keeps collectors searching day and night. They know that extraordinary pieces often hide in the most unexpected places. A rare coin worth millions could be sitting in a child's piggy bank. $1 billion penny could be mixed with common change in a gas station drawer. A priceless anomaly could be taped inside an old scrapbook, placed there decades ago by someone who thought it looked interesting. And as your thoughts expand, you begin to realize that the 1980 penny story is ultimately about human nature. Curiosity, hope, discovery, the desire to find meaning and value in everyday objects, the thrill of searching for treasure, the excitement of uncovering something no one else has. The joy of becoming part of history through a single coin. As Part 3 comes to a close, you now stand fully inside the world of the 1980 penny, its history, its minting process, its extraordinary errors, its economic backdrop, its artistry, and its global impact. The story keeps expanding, becoming richer, deeper, more mysterious. As the journey of the 1981 cent coin continues, you now find yourself drifting deeper into the hidden mechanics of numismatic value, the part of the story that most people never think about. It's one thing to know that a coin is rare or that it sold for a staggering amount. It's another thing entirely to understand why its value skyrocketed to levels beyond imagination. And in the case of the 1980 penny, understanding this requires stepping inside the psychology of collectors, the economics of rarity, and the unpredictable chain reactions that turn ordinary coins into global phenomena. Your mind begins to unravel the first major layer, the perception of rarity. If something is believed to be scarce, collectors chase it. But if something is proven to be almost impossible to find, collectors don't just chase it. They compete fiercely, sometimes irrationally, driven by a need to possess a piece of history no one else can claim. This is where the 1980 penny begins to build its momentum. Rumors started circulating about a unique error, a freak strike, a near-mythical anomaly that defied all logic. As whispers spread across the community, interest exploded. The fascination didn't grow gradually, it erupted like a volcano, catching the attention of everyone from beginner hobbyists to seasoned investors. This collective excitement feeds into the economy of rarity. When thousands of people desire something that only one or two specimens can fulfill, the value no longer follows simple supply and demand curves. It fractures into a new category entirely, a hyper-competitive collector economy. And the rarest 1980 penny sits at the very top of that pyramid, commanding the kind of bidding wars normally reserved for masterpieces of fine art or legendary items discovered in archaeological digs. The price climbs not because everyone wants it, but because the few people who can afford it absolutely refuse to let it slip away. As you're pulled into this world, you start thinking about the moment the record-breaking coin first appeared at auction. Imagine the tension in the room. Collectors sitting with paddle numbers, investors waiting on phone lines, representatives bidding on behalf of anonymous millionaires, possibly even billionaires who see the acquisition of a one-of-a-kind coin as a symbol of status. The energy would have been electric, the tension thick enough to feel in the air. Every bid raised eyebrows. Every jump in price sent shockwaves through the crowd. And when the bidding reached astronomical heights, the audience would have sworn the auctioneer was announcing a mistake. But it was no mistake. The coin had crossed the barrier that separates normal high-value items from priceless artifacts. It had entered the realm where logic no longer applies. Only desire, prestige, and competitive obsession remain. As your thoughts travel through this moment, you begin imagining how the auction catalogs described the coin. Maybe they highlighted its sharp strike, its unbroken fields, its blazing red surfaces untouched by time. Maybe they emphasized the intensity of the die error, the uniqueness of the anomaly that set it apart from every other cent ever struck. Maybe they described the coin with words like unprecedented, impossible, monumental, or once in eternity. These descriptions weren't exaggerations, they were reflections of what this coin truly represented. You now start thinking about the emotional journey of the collector who ultimately won the bidding war. Imagine the adrenaline rushing through their veins as the auctioneer slammed the gavel and declared the coin sold. Imagine the sudden realization that they had just acquired an artifact valued at nearly $1 billion. That moment wasn't just a purchase, it was a victory, a triumph over everyone else who had tried to claim the same treasure. And from that moment on, the coin became part of their legacy. But this leads you to wonder, how does a single penny become worth more than entire collections of ancient coins, gold coins, silver dollars, or world rarities? The answer lies in the intersection of rarity, story, anomaly, and cultural significance. The 1980 penny has all four. Its rarity is unmatched. Its story is irresistible. Its anomaly is unrepeatable. Its cultural significance is enormous. This perfect alignment is the unstoppable force behind its breathtaking value. Now your thoughts drift toward the environment of 1980 America once again. The economic pressure of rising copper prices created material tension. Inflation created fiscal uncertainty. And the mint was under constant scrutiny to maintain production while exploring cost-cutting alternatives. This unstable backdrop contributed to the accidental creation of unique minting errors. The machinery worked overtime. The dies were pushed beyond their intended life cycles. Maintenance schedules were stretched thin. Every corner of the mint was under pressure to keep up with demand. These conditions acted like ingredients in a chemical reaction. Each factor alone meant nothing, but together they formed the perfect circumstances for the rarest 1980 penny to emerge. Now your imagination shifts from the mint to the real world, the world where the coin traveled after striking. The coin might have been scooped into a massive storage bin with thousands of others. It might have been loaded into armored trucks, delivered to banks, rolled into paper wrappers, handed to cashiers, dropped into registers, or placed in someone's pocket without a second thought. The journey from the mint to its eventual discovery is a mystery, a path full of unknowns, chance encounters, coincidences, and narrow escapes. Because the truth is, rare coins are fragile not in metal but in destiny. One slip, one fall onto concrete, one scrape against another coin, one trip through a commercial counting machine, one moment against moisture or heat, and the coin's value would have evaporated instantly. This means the rarity of the billion-dollar penny isn't just in its minting, it's also in its survival. It survived cycles of handling, circulation, storage, transportation, and aging without ever acquiring damage. That survival is as miraculous as the striking error itself. Reflecting on this, you start to see the coin as a survivor, something that beat the odds twice. First, by being born with a once-in-history mint error, and second, by escaping all the destructive forces that should have erased its value forever. Your imagination now moves to the person who eventually discovered it. Picture them holding a magnifying glass, just casually examining some change or going through an old jar of coins. Maybe they were a collector. Maybe they were a beginner. Maybe they didn't even like coins, they just happened to notice something odd. The moment of realization must have been overwhelming. 1 second, they were looking at an ordinary penny. The next, they were staring at something that could alter their entire life. Their heart must have pounded. Their breath must have caught in their throat. Their hands must have trembled with a mixture of excitement and disbelief. They probably asked themselves over and over, "Is this real? Could this be the coin from the rumors? Is this actually possible?" And then they would have rushed to get it authenticated. Authentication is the gateway from curiosity to certainty. The coin must undergo microscopic examination, metal analysis, die comparison, strike diagnostics, high-resolution imaging, expert review. And when the graders finally confirmed what the finder had hoped, that the coin was indeed the rarest 1980 penny ever documented, the world changed forever. Collectors spread the news. Forums exploded. Videos went viral. Article after article appeared online. The story became global. You now find yourself exploring the concept of value again, not monetary value, but symbolic value. The 1980 penny became more than a collectible, it became a cultural event. It reminded people that extraordinary things can hide in plain sight. It inspired beginners to enter the world of numismatics. It revived interest in Lincoln cents. It increased nationwide awareness about rare pennies and coin hunting. And it proved that a simple copper coin, one that most people overlook or drop on the ground without caring, can suddenly become a treasure worth fighting for. As your thoughts expand further, you begin thinking about the broader timeline of the Lincoln cent series. From 1909 to 1980 is a span of 7 decades, 71 years of history, politics, wars, economic crises, minting changes, and artistic evolution. The 1980 penny sits at a powerful turning point in that timeline. It belongs to the final era of real copper cents. It stands at the edge of a technological shift. It marks the end of one legacy and the beginning of another. This context adds depth to its value. Because when collectors look at the 1980 penny, they don't just see copper. They see the legacy of Brenner's design. They see the artistry of Gasparo. They see the last heartbeat of traditional metal composition. They see a link between the past and the future. They see America's industrial strength, its heritage, its monetary history. And then, of course, they see the mind-blowing prestige of owning a one-of-a-kind anomaly. All these elements intertwine into a single coin, creating a narrative that stretches across time, technology, culture, and human emotion. The 1980 penny becomes an epic story wrapped in copper, a story that keeps expanding the deeper you explore it. And now, with this momentum building, you prepare to move even further into its world, into the next stage of its mystery, significance, and influence. As we move deeper into the layers of the 1981 cent coin, something fascinating emerges. The way collectors, historians, and even everyday citizens unknowingly shaped the coin's journey. A small copper-plated zinc disc weighing just 2.5 grams, measuring 19.05 millimeters in diameter, was never meant to be anything other than a simple monetary tool, yet it gradually became a symbolic thread connecting American history, art, economics, and human emotion. By 1980, the world around that coin was shifting rapidly. The United States was entering a decade known for technological breakthroughs, economic recalibration, and a new wave of patriotic sentiment. The penny minted that year silently absorbed all of this energy, catching microscopic details, accumulating marks from commerce, and developing the sort of character that only time can sculpt. Every scratch, every dent, every abrasion on its copper surface became part of its personal biography, and for collectors, those tiny indicators turned into priceless clues about where the coin had traveled. One of the most intriguing aspects of this 1980 penny is the small but critically important design choices that defined how Americans viewed their currency. On the obverse side sits the unmistakable profile of President Abraham Lincoln, sculpted by Victor David Brenner decades earlier. Brenner's design, though created in 1909, seemed even more relevant in 1980. Lincoln symbolized resilience, unity, and the courage to guide a nation through its most fragile and turbulent moments. When Americans opened their palms and saw his face staring back from the reddish copper coin, a subtle but powerful reminder echoed that the country's foundation was built on sacrifice, leadership, and unwavering determination. And then on the reverse side, the majestic Lincoln Memorial stood strong, designed by Frank Gasparo, capturing a physical and ideological structure central to the American story. Every stroke, pillar, and shadow of that memorial, shrink-scaled onto a tiny coin, carried massive cultural symbolism. It represented strength, remembrance, and the idea that great leaders and great struggles deserve eternal recognition. But what made the 1980 penny even more captivating is the economic reality behind its production. Most people do not realize that coins reflect national economic pressures just as much as historical ones. The decision in 1982 to shift the penny's composition from mostly copper to copper-plated zinc was fueled largely by rising copper prices. But in 1980, this transformation had not yet occurred. The coin from this year was still made predominantly from copper, 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. This is why the 1980 penny carries a different weight, a different sound when dropped, a different feel when held between the fingers. It has the density and authenticity of real metal rather than the lighter, almost hollow sensation of the later zinc versions. Collectors place immense value on this difference. Copper coins age more beautifully, developing natural patinas, deep hues, and unique toning patterns that turn each specimen into an individual work of art. No two 1980 copper pennies age the same way, which means rare patterns, unusual discolorations, or dramatic toning sometimes elevate ordinary scents into highly desirable collector's pieces. Even more fascinating is the microscopic detail embedded into the coin's strike. The minting process in 1980 was highly efficient, using powerful presses that stamped each blank planchet with incredible precision and speed. Yet the slightest misalignment, the smallest die crack, or a tiny momentary fluctuation could produce anomalies that collectors today call errors. These are not imperfections, they are accidents of history. They are the product of machines, metal, and time colliding unpredictably. And errors like off-center strikes, broad strikes, clipped planchets, die cracks, repunched mint marks, and doubled dies can turn a normal 1980 penny into an extraordinary treasure. Some of these error pennies have sold for thousands, tens of thousands, and in rare cases hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on sharpness, rarity, and demand. And it's this possibility, this tiny doorway to immense value, that transformed the 1980 penny from a mundane coin into a thrilling collectible. The $987 million narrative, inspired by the sensational high-end valuations and hype circulating across coin communities, adds a layer of cultural drama to the story of this coin. The idea that a single penny, small enough to hide beneath a fingernail, could be worth a staggering fortune sparks imagination and invites people to inspect the pennies sitting around in jars, drawers, or forgotten pockets. Even if the astronomical number is symbolic rarity, that's why some collectors chase the dream of finding a penny that could break records, just like the viral stories that claim values in the hundreds of millions. Han literal, it represents the electrifying potential that a hidden rarity could exist. Every year, collectors uncover previously unknown varieties, unreported minting anomalies, or coins preserved in unbelievable condition. And because the 1980 pennies were produced at very high volumes, the chance that rare variations exist is not just possible, it's highly probable. Somewhere out there, in someone's collection, pocket, attic, or forgotten container, an extraordinary 1980 penny may be waiting to reappear. And it's this mystery that drives collectors, viewers, and enthusiasts to keep paying attention. The weight of the coin is one of its often overlooked but deeply significant attributes. At 3.11 grams for the pre-1982 copper pennies, including the 1980 issue, it provides both a physical anchor and a historical timestamp. Anyone who handles coins regularly can instantly feel the difference between copper pennies and modern zinc versions. The copper ones carry a more confident heft. They feel solid, trustworthy, almost old-world in their sturdiness. Zinc pennies, by contrast, feel noticeably lighter, giving off a subtle sense of fragility and modern cost-cutting. So when collectors hold a 1980 copper penny, they aren't just holding metal, they're holding the last era of robust American small-denomination coinage. The last era when cost wasn't the dominating factor in the creation of currency, and when even the simplest coin reflected craftsmanship and tradition. Let's talk about the market surge around coins like this. While the $987 million figure captures the imaginative excitement of rare coin storytelling, the real world of coin trading is alive with auctions, private sales, appraisal events, and dealer negotiations. And within those settings, high-grade 1980 pennies, especially those certified by grading institutions like PCGS or NGC, can command shockingly high prices. A pristine MS-67 or MS-68 specimen, for example, can create bidding wars among collectors. Add an error or striking anomaly, and the value skyrockets. This constant demand helps push the narrative that the penny is more than pocket change, it's a historical artifact wrapped in economic potential, cultural importance, and collector excitement. Another intriguing aspect of the 1980 penny is its symbolism through time. For decades, people have debated whether the penny should be retired entirely. Rising production costs, inflation, and changes in purchasing behavior have made some question whether the penny still has a place in modern economics. Yet coins like the 1980 penny push back against that argument, reminding people that coins do more than represent money. They capture eras, preserve artistry, and connect generations. They bridge the gap between past and present, making history feel tangible and accessible. A person in 2025 holding a 1980 penny is physically touching something older than most modern technologies. That alone gives the penny a kind of timeless magic. Even the tiny, DE mint mark, found on many 1980 pennies minted in Denver, carries significance. It tells you where the coin was born. Denver minted coins often have different wear patterns, strike characteristics, and era types than Philadelphia minted ones. A trained collector can sometimes identify where a coin circulated based solely on this combination of mint mark and surface characteristics. Did it travel through vending machines in Colorado? Did it pass through grocery stores in Texas? Was it stored in a roll by someone who lived on the West Coast? The mint mark becomes a key that unlocks parts of the coin's travel history. And if the coin has no mint mark at all, then it originated in Philadelphia, one of the oldest and most historically significant mints in American coinage. This ability of a penny to silently travel across decades and states, gathering stories along the way, is one of the reasons why longtime collectors describe coins as storytellers. A 1980 penny might have been used to buy candy from a small town store that no longer exists. It might have passed through the hands of a child, a cashier, a farmer, a bus driver, a soldier, or someone working late-night shifts trying to support a family. That penny, sitting quietly today in someone's drawer, could have witnessed thousands of tiny everyday transactions that collectively paint a picture of American life from 1980 to today. And as we explore the world of these coins further, the mythos grows deeper. Certain 1980 pennies with extraordinary conditions, perfect shine, flawless surfaces, razor-sharp details, could theoretically reach enormous values because of rarity mixed with universal appeal. Most 1980 pennies were heavily circulated, meaning pristine ones are extremely scarce. And scarcity plus demand equals value, sometimes unbelievable value. As we continue unfolding the deeper essence of the 1980 1-cent coin, the story begins to stretch beyond the physical world and enters the realm of human fascination, memory, and the timeless urge to preserve objects that carry traces of history. The 1980 penny exists not only as a copper disc but as an intersection of craftsmanship, economics, and emotional connection. When collectors study these coins under magnifying lenses, they aren't merely inspecting metal, they are attempting to decode the silent experiences the coin has absorbed over more than 4 decades. The fine edges, the slight bevel around the rim, the delicate raised letters spelling out "I in God we trust," liberty, and the date 1980, all tell a story about the level of precision the U.S. Mint was operating at. And yet, each coin remains subtly unique. Mint luster differs slightly from one penny to another, depending on how the metal was mixed, how fast the press struck the planchet, or how quickly the coin entered circulation. Some 1980 pennies retain almost mirror-like brilliance, as though they were frozen in time and shielded from the world. Others bear thousands of tiny marks from decades of usage, almost like wrinkles on an old face carrying memories too deep for words. Collectors often talk about how a simple penny can become a doorway to the past. Someone holding a 1980 coin in their hand in 2025 is holding a piece of the era when telephones still had cords, when music was recorded on vinyl and cassettes, when cars had boxy shapes, and when the world moved at a vastly different pace. This penny has lived through multiple generations, political cycles, economic recessions, technological revolutions, and cultural shifts. It has survived pockets, purses, drawers, cash registers, and jars. It's been dropped, picked up, exchanged, forgotten, rediscovered, stored, and sometimes even cherished without the holder knowing why. And this is what gives the 1980 penny its magic. It carries the weight of plainness yet hides the potential of greatness. A coin that was once worth a single cent could now be a treasure that sparks curiosity and excitement in someone who didn't even realize they were holding a piece of history. The design of the penny plays a major role in this fascination. The portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse is more than a profile, it's a symbol of leadership during crisis, unity during division, and moral courage in moments where the nation could have fallen apart. His image on the penny has remained unchanged for more than a century, and that stability gives Americans a sense of continuity in a world where everything else changes rapidly. On the reverse of the 1980 penny stands the Lincoln Memorial, a structure carved with meticulous detail into the coin's copper surface. Despite being so small, the engraving captures the symbolism of the real monument. Every column, every shadow, every architectural line becomes a miniature masterpiece. And tucked between the pillars, in microscopic form, sits the tiny but emotionally powerful representation of Lincoln's statue. Many people have never noticed it, but once they do, they realize how extraordinary the artistry is. It takes immense skill to engrave such a detailed image onto a coin barely larger than a thumbnail. The coin's composition is another part of its story. In 1980, pennies were still made with a majority copper alloy, 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc. This composition gives them durability and a deep, rich tone that ages gracefully. Over time, copper develops warm brown or reddish hues, sometimes even shades of purple, green, or blue depending on the chemical environment it has been exposed to. This natural patina makes each coin unique, almost like a living piece of artwork that evolves with age. Modern pennies, made after 1982, lack this character. Their zinc cores often lead to corrosion, bubbling, or surface damage. This difference is one reason collectors value pre-1982 pennies. They have integrity, resilience, and an old-world feel. When you hold a 1980 penny, the copper speaks to its weight, its temperature, its resonance when gently tapped. It feels real, and that authenticity elevates its value far beyond the single cent printed in the economy. This brings us to the growing fascination with rare errors and high-grade specimens. A flawless 1980 penny is already hard to find because most entered circulation immediately after minting. But a flawless 1980 penny with a rare error, like a double die obverse, a dramatic off-center strike, a broad strike, a die crack, or a clipped planchet, becomes a treasure of incredible value. Error coins represent the unpredictability of minting machinery. No matter how precise the U.S. Mint tries to be, machinery is never perfect, and those imperfections create objects that collectors chase with passion. A small doubled curve on a letter, a little split line in Lincoln's coat, or a slight rotation of the die can turn an ordinary penny into a coin worth thousands. And the legends of coins worth tens or hundreds of millions, like the claims of certain 1980 pennies rumored to be valued above $987 million, fuel a kind of cultural myth-making. While these extreme numbers may be symbolic or exaggerated, the excitement they generate keeps people checking their change, searching old jars, and opening long-forgotten boxes. Speaking of those legendary values, the idea of a penny being worth close to $1 billion taps into something deep in human nature, the desire to discover something extraordinary hidden in something ordinary. It mirrors the fantasy of finding a priceless painting in a thrift store, or a rare artifact buried in the backyard. Even if most people know that a penny worth $987 million is more myth than market reality, the dream itself is powerful. It keeps the story alive. It keeps people watching, searching, learning, and imagining. And sometimes, the stories are grounded in truth. Certain coins, like the 1943 copper penny or the 1933 double eagle, really have achieved astronomical values. So when people look at their 1980 pennies, there is always that small voice whispering, "What if?" And even that possibility is enough to turn a common coin into an object of incredible emotional value. The economic context of 1980 adds another layer to the coin's significance. Inflation, global tensions, and shifts in federal monetary policy shaped this era, and coins minted during these times can reflect those changes in subtle ways. High mintages in 1980 were partly due to increased demand for small denomination currency during everyday cash transactions. The more coins produced, the more variations could occur. Millions of 1980 pennies circulated across the country, each taking its own unpredictable path. Some stayed local, circulating within the same town or state for years. Others traveled across the nation, crossing borders through commerce, tourism, or relocation. And some ended up overseas, creating stories of American currency in foreign lands. Wherever they went, they carried with them the identity of the United States, its art, its leadership, its values, its economic shifts, and its history. And through all this, the penny remained a symbol of accessibility. Anybody, regardless of wealth or background, could own one. Children could collect them. Adults could save them. Elders could pass them down. No matter how low its face value might be, the penny was and still is one of the most democratic items ever created. It costs almost nothing, yet it holds infinite stories. And the 1980 version of this coin sits at a perfect midpoint, old enough to be nostalgic, yet modern enough to remain relatable. For collectors, this combination is irresistible. Another fascinating aspect is the way people store their pennies. Some toss them in jars, others wrap them in rolls, and some keep them hidden away in boxes for years without ever realizing they might be sitting on something rare. Time transforms routine storage into accidental preservation. A jar untouched since the 1980s could be a treasure chest today, containing gems that have stayed protected from wear and corrosion. Many high-grade coins discovered in modern times were found not in collections, but in forgotten household containers. This is why every 1980 penny examined today has a unique preservation story, shaped by the decisions of dozens of people who handled it long before anyone realized its potential value. At this point, the emotional, historical, artistic, and economic threads all weave together to create a picture of a coin that is far more than small change. It is a symbol of endurance. It is a time traveler. It is a record keeper. It is an artifact of American culture that carries stories invisible to the eye but powerful to the imagination. And while most 1980 pennies remain humble in market value, the possibility of finding that one extraordinary example, whether due to flawless condition, rare error, or exceptional toning, keeps collectors searching tirelessly. The 1980 penny is a reminder that even the smallest objects can carry the biggest stories. And even the most ordinary items can turn extraordinary when viewed through the lens of curiosity, passion, and history. And this is why collectors continue to chase them, why videos about them continue to go viral, and why the legend of its potential value, whether thousands, millions, or the mythical $987 million, continues to circulate. The coin may be tiny, but its legacy is enormous.